On Monday, March 10th, teams can begin legally tampering with the free agent class. And on Wednesday, March 12th, the players can begin to sign new contracts for the 2025 NFL season. So today, on Thursday, March 6th, we're going to take our hand at predicting where these free agents will land and where specifically we want to see them land for fantasy football success in 2025. So fellas, let's start with Davante Adams, who was released by the Jets earlier this week, who I actually think will be somewhat of a hot commodity as a free agent. You both actually have him going to the Los Angeles Chargers. So Cameron, I'll start with you. What's your reason for that?
I think him and Herbert would just be so much fun together. I think that's really where it comes from. I think it helps out Herbert a ton from a fantasy perspective. I also think it keeps the longevity of Davante Adams alive. He's a guy we saw last year who can still get it done. Obviously, targets are going to be down in this Chargers offense compared to Aaron Rodgers force feeding you the ball. But I think Ladd McConkey can still thrive. I think Adams could thrive, and I think Herbert could thrive. So perfect synergy for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Synergy. So what is it for you then, Ty?
I just want to see the Ladd McConkey, Davante Adams partnership in that offense. I mean, two guys that are going to be able to get open with ease because of the skill sets that they have. And the best part about it is that they're not going to be they're not going to be, butting heads with each other, right? Ladd is a slot guy. Davante can win on the inside as well, but he's more so on the outside. It just gives the Chargers a wide receiver one, and they have the money to go spend it on a guy like Davante Adams, right? Because you can't go into next season with Quentin Johnson and Josh Palmer as your starting two outside receivers.
So I did the Chargers would be my second spot in which I think Davante Adams should go to. I do think if we're going to look at this from like a fantasy perspective as well, there's a part of me that's like, you know what? I wonder if Green Bay might actually end up being the better spot than the Chargers. And I only say that because you got Jayden Reed on the inside. You're going to be without Christian Watson next year. Romeo Dobbs, yeah, he's a fine little player. Dontavian Wicks has all sorts of issues that we're still trying to pray to the fantasy gods that they go away so he could be a fantasy relevant piece, right? But Josh Jacobs said it. This team needs a one. They need someone who can come in and be an alpha. That's Davante Adams. He's got history with Matt LaFleur. He's got history with this offense. Sure, he and Jordan Love could build up some more synergy, need to build that synergy. But this is a team where I think Davante Adams could come in to thrive, be the one right away, and be part of one of the most fun and explosive offenses that the NFL has to offer. Now we're going to turn the page a little bit. This player actually isn't a free agent, but as of this recording of Wednesday, March 5th at 3:20 p.m. Central Time, DK Metcalf has requested a trade from the Seattle Seahawks just a few hours prior. So we're going to have some fun. We're going to throw DK Metcalf into this conversation today as well. And Ty, you actually have him being traded to the Green Bay Packers.
I do, just the dominant outside guy that this Green Bay offense is lacking, right? Christian Watson with his injury problems, lack of production. You could say the same for Romeo Dobbs in that aspect as well. Getting a guy like DK Metcalf will almost certainly take your offense to another level. I think DK Metcalf is going to be the most prized possession in terms of receivers. Obviously, T. Higgins is available on the franchise tag. But then, again, we're going to go over some of the other free agents. But Davante Adams, these are a lot of aging receivers. DK Metcalf still has some youth to him. So I wonder if he's going to be kind of the prize commodity of the receivers.
Yeah, he again, solves the piece of the puzzle that Josh Jacobs pointed out this offseason of getting an alpha one in there, and DK Metcalf can absolutely play that role. Cameron, you and I have DK Metcalf being traded to the same place. I'm going to guess it's for the same reason as well, but you and I have him being traded to the New England Patriots.
I do just want to say it is a little annoying that you guys keep talking about how the Packers need a wide receiver one when they already have 5 of them on their team. I just the disrespect. I'm going to throw the Coleman tweet up because he had the tweet of the year talking. What does this make 6 or 7 wide receiver ones on the Packers now if they sign? I lost count. Phenomenal tweet. But to see Drake May and DK Metcalf together would be awesome. I think Drake May is going to be a phenomenal quarterback in the NFL. I think that DK Metcalf only helps him. DK can prove once again here, I can be the alpha. I can be the wide receiver one. If you give me the opportunity, I can be a big target guy. So yeah, I think it fills the need for both DK and Drake May when it comes to fantasy.
This recipe has never not worked before, has it? You got Steph Diggs to the Bills. You got DJ Moore to the Bears. Now, albeit it didn't elevate Justin Fields, but hey, you know what? It was still plenty of fun for DJ Moore that year. You have AJ Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles as well. I mean, this is like New England. Go get your second-year quarterback, the stud wide receiver that he needs, and DK Metcalf is still young enough at 27 years old to produce like the alpha we all know he has the capability of being. So, yeah, I am with you. This is just too much fun of a pairing. If you're the Patriots, you got to get him somebody. You can't go this free agent cycle, this NFL draft, without getting Drake May a top target. You can't be thrown to Pop Douglas and Keyshawn Boutte, Hunter Henry, nice little player, but like all these guys, you got it. It's worse than the Packers. Like the Patriots got five to seven wide receiver threes and no wide receiver twos or even wide receiver ones. So, yeah, go out and get DK Metcalf. This is like a match made in heaven right here. If you can't land T Higgins, you look like you're gonna chime in with something else, Cam. You got that little grin on your face.
We need a nice little player count here for Lucas. We're already at 2.
Am I on a roll with that?
I think we're gonna have quite a few where we're talking about free agents because you're talking about guys coming to replace other players. So I think we might have quite a few nice little players. Also, you just left out the most obvious one of all, but Jerry Jeudy to the Cleveland Browns and the way that he elevated Jameis Winston as well.
Oh, get out of here. Jameis needs no elevating. Jameis is already elevated.
Fine, it elevated Judy's game. All right. I mean, phenomenal player.
Nice little player, you say, huh?
No, I was gonna say another nice little player we could talk
he's
about.
A big guy.
Chris Godwin also hits the free agent market this offseason. Cameron, you and I have him returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which we'll come back to in a moment, because Ty, you have him going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Give me your reasoning there.
John Spytek is the new GM of the Raiders, and he's coming over from Tampa Bay. He came to Vegas because of the Tom Brady connection from Tampa Bay as well. I think you also get your new quarterback, a weapon like Chris Godwin that is just going to be an insane possession receiver that's going to just rack up receptions for you. Yes, you already have Jacoby Myers, and I think you can make the argument that they play similar roles in similar ways, but Godwin being just a bigger, more physical receiver than Jacoby Myers, I see a really nice fit with Vegas.
I don't hate that at all, because you can actually move Jacoby Myers to the outside. I believe it was 60+% of Jacoby's routes were actually run on the perimeter this year. So you can keep Godwin in the slot and move Jacoby to the outside as well and have him live out there. Before Cameron and I get into why we think Chris Godwin should return to the Buccaneers, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel here. Turn on that notification bell as well so you know when all of our newest episodes are out. We're continuously diving into Dynasty content this offseason. We're going to do a free agency recap as well, give you all of our winners and losers from the cycle. We're going to be talking about rookie rankings coming up as well. So make sure you subscribe here to the fellowship. Again, turn on that notification bell as well so you can be alerted when all of our newest content is up for you. Cameron, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, our landing spot for Chris Godwin. For me, they've already been linked. They've already been discussing a contract. To me, this just makes sense, and you can keep the synergy with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. It's going to be tough to think Chris Godwin can get a good bag elsewhere coming off of this injury.
Yeah, obviously, Liam Cohen gone. We've spoken highly of him as a play caller, but why not run it back? Because it worked out so well from a fantasy perspective. Mike Evans was good. Baker Mayfield was good. Chris Godwin was good before he got hurt. Bucky Irving was good. Even Rachaad White was still, a decent little player, as they say. But I think you just run it back here with Chris Godwin. I would agree. I think that it's just from a fan's perspective, not going to get a ton better than it will in Tampa.
I need it on a t-shirt now, a nice little player t-shirt.
Nice
I will wear that every single episode. We're hitting an interesting stretch now with the free agents where we're getting to the aging guys, right? Where they're not necessarily replacements for these players that we've been talking about. But at this point, it seems like they're going to be supplements to plug in alongside of the pieces these teams already have. So let's first talk about Stefon Diggs, who is also coming off of a season-ending injury. Ty, you and I have him going to the Dallas Cowboys here. Now, we understand Trayvon Diggs might not be on the team anymore by the start of next season. To me, if you want to keep Trayvon Diggs around, you can extend a nice little olive branch after all these rumors and say, hey, we'll bring in your brother. We'll smooth things over here. But Ty, why do you like the fit here with the Dallas Cowboys?
It's just another piece opposite of CeeDee Lamb that takes pressure off of him, right? And that also then is another vote of confidence for Brian Schottenheimer, who the general public has just slammed for being the next head coach of the team. You get him another weapon like Stefon Diggs. It's just a vote of confidence that he'll be able to figure something out with CeeDee Lamb and Stefon Diggs as his two top pass catchers.
And again, Stefon Diggs, a player you can slide inside or outside. Obviously, played majority of his snaps from the slot this last year. So if you want to keep him in there, you can. When you want to move CeeDee Lamb in there, you move Diggs to the outside. Two versatile guys you can slide all over your offense. So that's why I do like Diggs here, because I don't want someone to just come in and plug up the slot and force CeeDee Lamb out of there. But at the same time, Diggs is versatile enough where you could play him all over the formation. But Cameron, you have him going to. I actually really like this landing spot, and admittedly, it wasn't one that I first thought of. But the Arizona Cardinals, give me your reasoning there.
Yeah, I think it just opens up the field more for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it allows him to do a little bit more where teams aren't going to key on him as much. I understand he plays in a similar area of the field as Trey McBride. However, Diggs being 31 years old, coming off an ACL tear, I'm not actually worried about him taking away from McBride and his targets. I think this team's just lacking a number two so much that I think they'll be able to use him wherever. I think it'll give him I don't know. It'll give him time to get back from this injury, to kind of ease back into it, because they're not going to call on him right away. He'll be the third option. I think he'll stay as the third option throughout the season. And then obviously it helps Kyler Murray just having one more weapon. So I think it can kind of help everybody on the team.
It was interesting too. I read a report that said that maybe we can throw this up on the screen as well. Matthew Berry at the Combine had mentioned that Diggs might actually command a nice market in free agency as well, despite the season-ending injury. So it'll be interesting. Apparently it's like a 50-50 chance he returns to Houston. I really don't mind that for Steph Diggs either. But yeah, this will be interesting. I'm interested to see what kind of a market he commands out on free agency, but if he's going to change teams, it's again anybody's best guess where he ends up, because I do think there's a lot of teams that could utilize his services. Another aging wide receiver that we're going to be talking about here, Keenan Allen, previously of the Chicago Bears. Now I'm going to give another disclaimer on this one. I don't know if he ends up on any of these teams that we have. Because he's come out and said that he wants to play on the Bears or he wants to play on the Chargers. Now, guess what? I don't like either of those options for fantasy football. So this is where like the fantasy element comes into play here, where it's like, where do we want to see him for fantasy football? Not necessarily where do we think he's actually going to land. Maybe let's start with this before we get into our own individual spots. If you had to pick one of the two, Bears or Chargers, where do you think Keenan Allen ends up? Or do you just think he retires?
I think he's probably a Charger. I think he wants to go home. I don't think he ever really wanted to be in Chicago.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, he was traded from the Chargers to the Bears. I think, again, it wasn't that like he asked to be released or anything like that. That was a purely cap state, or it was right. It was just a business decision. I think the Chargers I would prefer 10 times more than the Bears. I know you got Ben Johnson. I don't like complicated offenses with multiple weapons. I think that's the best way to say it.
I'm not going to be surprised if he just ends up retiring. If you're the Chargers, this isn't the direction you want to go. You don't want to bring back the aging guy that you let go of. And if you're the Bears, like, let's move forward with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. So I don't know. My guess is that he retires, but let's assume Keenan Allen does accept an offer to play somewhere that's not one of those two places. We've already talked a little bit about the Texans and the Cowboys. So Ty, I'll explain your fit here with the Houston Texans.
I think it's just the perfect short-term solution while Tank Dell is out and rehabbing. I think if Keenan Allen's logic to go to the Chargers or the Bears has anything to do with competing for the playoffs and championships, Houston should also fit that bill. Again, they're not the two places that he's played. So again, they're on the outside, but I think Again, Houston would be a great spot that he complements Nico Collins really well. Gives CJ Stroud another weapon. You can let Stefon Diggs walk, not have to risk you don't have any injury, rehab that you have to deal with him. And I think Keenan Allen, again, just a natural separator. You got Nico Collins that can get open as well. But again, Keenan Allen is a nice compliment.
Yeah, you just shove Keenan Allen in the slot. It's a reliable weapon there. Enough said there. Cameron, for you, similar to CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys?
Yeah, he's in his Anquan Bolden phase where he's not outrunning anybody, but somehow he's open catching passes.
Right.
And that's really all you need next to that's all you need next to CeeDee Lamb. And yeah, but pretty much just what you guys said for Stefon Diggs, just insert it here for Keenan Allen.
Yeah, 100%. I think the Broncos could actually be an interesting spot for Keenan Allen as well. I do think you need somebody alongside Cortland Sutton for Bo Nix. You got Sutton playing on the perimeter. You got to get someone more reliable than created touches for Marvin Mims underneath a Lil Jordan Humphrey. We tried the Devon Vele experiment, right? Like, nice little player, Lil Jordan Humphrey. That one flows nicely. But look, you need something. We're gonna kill that joke by the end of this, but you need somebody else there alongside Cortland Sutton. Now, could the Broncos go out and draft Jade Higgins? Colston Loveland is a name that is commonly mocked to the Denver Broncos right now. Absolutely. But like, if you're the Denver Broncos and you're basically set on defense, you can go out and accumulate an abundance of riches on offense to figure out what's going to stick for Bo Nix. What is it? Where do we need a piece to just transition us for another year? And like, if you're Keenan Allen, they might be able to throw you the most money out of some of these teams that just might not want to for a 32-year-old wide receiver. So I think the Broncos are a fascinating fit. Again, you keep Cortland Sutton on the outside. You just keep Keenan Allen in the slot, reliable underneath option for Bo Nix, so he's not always having to push the ball downfield. Another aging vet, fellas, DeAndre Hopkins. Some of these names, it's starting to get gross because we don't actually know how fantasy relevant they're going to be. But for both of you, you have them go back to the Kansas City Chiefs. Cameron, I'll start with you this time. Why is that?
I think he realized, oh, this isn't actually that bad going in here. I only got to catch 5 passes a day. I got to be a red zone target. We win, which is unique for him based off all the teams he's been on in his career. You're 32, going to be 33 years old. For him himself, I think it's great. I think as Rashee Rice comes back from the suspension and the injury, I think he can help out a little bit there. But like you said, I don't think he's going to be overly fantasy relevant where he's stealing from Rice or Xavier Worthy when they're both full go.
Yeah, where are you at on this signing with the Chiefs, Ty? I should say where you're at on this signing, but give me your reasoning for this signing.
I just think that Hopkins is going to have the toughest market for, I'll just say, for the receivers that we're talking about today, just because of the age and the drop in production, like Cam mentioned earlier. And I think the other part of this too is that if he wants to play for a contending team, like if he wants a championship, it really narrows down it narrows down the list to like 2 or 3 teams.
Sure.
And I think the most likely team is the Chiefs are going to be like, you're going to take a discount to what you could get on the market with some other team because you want to play with Mahomes. Cool. We'll take that as our kind of, like, again, as the filling guy for when Rashee Rice is suspended or still rehabbing, and then he can kind of fall back into the shadows a bit as their number 3 guy.
So I got the Chargers here, and I think this is just kind of all right, we don't get Davante Adams. Maybe they make a move for DK Metcalf. I really don't see that in the cards for them either, but they need a perimeter guy. Okay, they got Ladd McConkey playing in the slot. Let's not clog up the slot. Let's not move Ladd outside. Let's keep him where he was thriving in his rookie season. So you get someone like DeAndre Hopkins who can draw attention on the outside, not in the same capacity that he once was able to. But this is kind of a process of elimination. You know what? DeAndre Hopkins, maybe the best perimeter wide receiver still left on the market. We have one other perimeter guy that we're going to talk about, but I think it's going to be funny to talk about him based on where we all have him going. But DeAndre Hopkins, again, kind of a last resort here for the Chargers. Get somebody out on the perimeter who you could still have a nice little year with Justin Herbert, but a 1-year deal would be my guess. And I think wherever he signs, it's going to be a 1-year deal for an underwhelming amount of money. Next vet, Amari Cooper. We all have him going to the Steelers. I'm interested to hear all of our reasonings for this one. Maybe I'll start and say process of elimination for the Steelers. They've tried trading for everybody else. They need somebody else to play alongside George Pickens. You can move both of these guys inside or out if you need to. It just kind of seems like the lackluster, hey, you know what? Well, we tried, and you know what? But we got Amari Cooper. Like that's the vibes I'm just getting from this signing and where I think Pittsburgh is at to try and land another receiver alongside George Pickens. So, Cameron, I'll start with you again here. Why do you have Amari Cooper going to the Steelers?
Like you said, Pittsburgh needs a wide receiver too. And I just picked one guy to sacrifice to the Arthur Smith system. And Amari Cooper happened to be that guy after a lackluster season last year in Buffalo. I wouldn't be too excited about Amari himself, but I'm thinking about this from a overall perspective. I don't know where I'd be excited for Amari to go because he had Josh Allen last year with no true wide receiver one. It couldn't make it work. So let's just send him somewhere where no matter who the wide receiver two is, it's kind of the place to go to die. Push him there and just make sure nobody else ends up there.
Sure. I originally had Amari Cooper to the Broncos, and then again, I shifted a few things around, and Keenan Allen ended up being my guy there. And to me, this just made more sense to get somebody in alongside George Pickens. And I hate that you say it sounds like a sacrifice because that's kind of just what it feels like, doesn't it, Ty?
It does. And you think about too, like the kind of free agents that Mike Tomlin has brought in the past. It's either kind of the mid-tier kind of overpay players, or it is the vets of, that have a really good past, and he kind of can revive them a little bit. That's Amari Cooper. He's seen him play in Cleveland for 3 years as well. He knows what he's going to get with Amari Cooper as well. So yeah, I'll you know what? The glass is half full with my explanation. I'm definitely I will drink the Kool-Aid though, that it is kind of the sacrificial lamb for these receivers.
Yeah, it'll be glass half full, glass half empty with Amari Cooper, and I will be very much on the glass half empty side, and I would vouch that it's definitely 75% empty compared to half empty. Last name we'll bring up here in the wide receiver group. Another name that is out on the trade market, not a free agent, but it seems like maybe not a foregone conclusion because, Ty, you have him staying with the Rams, but Cooper Kupp is being shopped. In my mind, it seems like a foregone conclusion that he's gone. The Rams have kind of opened the door to say, go ahead, find your trade partner. And for me, this is the Houston Texans, where, again, you Nick Caley just signed as the offensive coordinator there. You bring over your one guy from the previous offense. You bring over Cooper Kupp, who's a reliable, proven pass-catching option for C.J. Stroud to pair alongside Nico Collins to keep Kupp in the slot, right? We could play this game all day long. Cameron, anything you want to add on to that? Because you also have Cooper Kupp to the Texans.
Yeah, I think it's probably a 1 year, almost prove it deal, vet deal, whatever you want to see, right? I don't think Texans want to hitch their wagon long-term to Kupp. I think Kupp still thinks he's got something left in the tank. So he's just like, I don't want to sign for too little here. And Texans just need a guy for a year. Ty mentioned that earlier, but the Tank Dell replacement, because 99.9% chance Tank Dell doesn't see the field in 2025. So I think Cooper Kupp can kind of fit in there, be that role. He doesn't have to beat anyone deep because you got Nico. So I think this is a great fit for Kupp.
And Ty, you have him staying with the Rams. This just, they don't find a trade partner. Teams just aren't coming at, again, you compare it to Keenan Allen last year. Keenan Allen was what, 4th, 5th round pick, right? Nobody's coming with that offer. What's your reasoning here? Matt Stafford's back now. We run it back again. Sorry, now I'm taking away your potential thunder, but go for it.
Cooper Kupp is a nice little player, and you explained everything that I wanted to say, so we can move on. I'm kidding.
I was going to say, I apologize. I did explain quite a bit there. I should have just shut up.
I do think it bringing back Matthew Stafford signals that they are willing and are okay running it back. I think in a world where they do trade Cooper Kupp, it is because they find something acceptable. Like we just saw Deebo Samuel get traded for a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
If they can get something like that, I think they would take it. They would take that offer. But I just think the smarter move for the Rams, because if they trade him post June 1, you get around $11 million in cap room freed up then. Anything before June 1, it's a little dicey, a little complicated. You're not really like freeing up as much. So to me, I feel like the logical move is to bring in a receiver in the draft, whether that be in the first or second round, and let them be the wide receiver 3. I know that they use 3 wide receiver sets at a insanely high rate, so that rookie's going to be getting on the field. But I think if Cooper Kupp misses more time, at least you have another option and you have a backup plan rather than just we traded Cooper Kupp, then we didn't take a receiver, or we did take a receiver. I think that the point I'm trying to make is that it's not a guarantee that you're going to find a replacement for Cooper Kupp right away. And so then you're going to go into the year with Puka Nacua and Jordan Whittington, Tyler Higbee. I don't think that's why Matt Stafford would re-sign with the team.
Which checks out because my gut instinct originally was, I think Cooper Kupp might be staying, but I do think they end up probably finding a way to deal him and get him to the Houston Texans all in all. But that covers the wide receivers that will, for the most part, be somewhat fantasy relevant next year. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with the running backs and quarterbacks afterwards. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We have covered the free agent wide receivers, threw in DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp as well, just to make it a little more entertaining. We're now going to move on to the running backs and quarterbacks, fellas, starting with Aaron Jones, previously of the Minnesota Vikings, or Ty, I guess in your case, he will be returning to the Minnesota Vikings this offseason. Why do you think that?
I just think he is a good fit for what Kevin O'Connell wants to do on offense. I don't think he's going to have the same workload as he had last year. It was a career high in carries and yards. That being said, I think, again, Minnesota is a good schematic fit for him. And I think of the other teams that he could sign with, I don't necessarily think he's going to be utilized in the best way. Like, I don't mind your guys' landing spots, because I also, like, the runner-up for me was the Dallas Cowboys, because he's got, he's a different animal when he goes to Dallas. But I just think Minnesota gives him a more intriguing offer and just a better fit.
Cameron, so if Dallas was Ty's second place, he's your first place. Why is that?
I think Dallas might bring in someone else. I think they've realized the Rico Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott, experiment didn't work. I think are scared off. I think Jerry Jones is scared off of spending big money, spending draft capital on a running back after the way Zeke's tenure ended. I think he just got flack for it. So I think they spend money elsewhere this offseason. And so they bring in Aaron Jones, seeing, hey, he got $7 million last year. Maybe we can get him for a little bit cheaper this year. And I think for Aaron Jones, he does kind of need to split a backfield just because he's older. He's a guy who's dealt with injuries, right? He's not going to be able to command 300 carries or something like that. So if they bring someone else in or keep Rico Dowdle around, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world for him.
No, and that's kind of why I like the Denver Broncos here, which I know Travion Henderson is another popular name to go to the Denver Broncos potentially in the NFL draft. But if they don't take him with the 20th overall pick, I highly doubt they're going to be able to get him at 51 then in the second round. So in my eyes, if you take a Colston Loveland in the first round, then, it's because you signed Aaron Jones and you could pick up another running back, maybe if you really wanted to do a Caleb Johnson, or you want to even wait a little bit longer for another running back in this deep, deep class. So yeah, I'm with you. I like the fit in Denver because it gives Bo Nix, again, another out in the passing game. And also Sean Payton's used to working with pass catching backs as well. He's used to splitting this backfield, right? So I think Aaron Jones could find himself a nice little home in Denver this offseason. Again, this offseason for the Broncos should be about giving Bo Nix as many reasons as possible to not fail next season, to not hit a sophomore slump. And I think Aaron Jones could be one of those guys that prevents that from happening in his offense. J.K. Dobbins, phenomenal season with the Los Angeles Chargers. Cameron, you and I think he's going to get a little bit of reward money here for his season. But Ty, this is where you have the Dallas Cowboys picking up a running back. And this one's interesting to me because I think J.K. Dobbins, I get he's not expensive, but when you talk about paying money, it's like a 1-year deal for a running back. Like J.K. Dobbins might be the most expensive 1-year running back out there.
Maybe. I wonder if teams are still going to be scared off a bit. I know that J.K. Dobbins did play with the Chargers and he played majority of the season, but he did still miss a stretch of games. So I wonder if teams are going to be scared off by injury history. Injury potential could cheapen him a bit. I think, again, you're either paying for an aging veteran running back in this free agent class, or you're paying for a guy that does have some injury problems or lingering injury problems as well. And I think the one running back that doesn't meet those or doesn't fit in either of those categories, we're going to talk about later. I see him probably getting the biggest bag in free agency, but I think there's certainly a world where J.K. Dobbins is the most paid. And again, I had him going to Dallas just because I think with Dobbins not being the highest paid, you're getting the most bang for your buck for a guy that still has some youth to him, who did show some explosiveness in good play with LA last year. I think that's more up Jerry Jones's alley than somebody else.
Sure. No, and that checks out. Cameron, what about for you staying with the Chargers? Because honestly, for me, this was process of elimination. I actually had the most difficult time trying to place J.K. Dobbins, and this was mostly, you know what, from a fantasy perspective, I actually think J.K. Dobbins probably belongs in the Los Angeles Chargers offense if we want to see another high level of success next year.
Yeah, running back 18 in points per game in PPR for J.K. Dobbins last season, averaging 14.8, so he did pretty well there. He only had 200 carries. I would imagine Jim Harbaugh's thinking, hey, we want to continue to run the ball even more than we did last year. So you bring in somebody else, you bring in one of these rookies. I don't think that kills J.K. Dobbins. I think he can still see almost 200 carries in a split backfield. Maybe he had 32 receptions. That might come down because he's not, quote unquote, a receiving back. Right. However, I think for him to succeed, and as well as what the Chargers want to do, I think that it's again a good fit for JK.
Yeah. Again, process of elimination, and we saw the success. I'm willing to just run it back if you're this Los Angeles Chargers offense and you're going to allocate resources elsewhere. This next name is going to be fascinating. Around these parts, we make sure to use his full government name, Nicholas Jamal Chubb, because that man deserves our respect. We have disrespected him for too long. And of course, when we start to respect him, and unfortunately goes down the toilet. But anyways, Nicholas Jamal Chubb is a free agent this offseason. We all got different landing spots here. Cameron, you and I were originally in alignment, and then I maybe had a little bit of coming to my senses of actually I would enjoy this fantasy situation a lot more. But you have him going to the Las Vegas Raiders here.
Yeah, I think it can kind of go both ways for Nick Chubb this year. Obviously, an older running back, still coming back from the ACL. I think he can succeed with the Raiders, where if he comes back into his old form a little bit more, we see some more of that explosiveness. He can kind of take off from there. I think also with the Raiders, if it kind of comes to he just doesn't have it anymore, the knee, was kind of the nail in the coffin for Nick Chubb. You got me screwed up. Nick Chubb's career, which would be a huge bummer. He is so much fun to watch. I really hope that's not the case. I don't think it kills any of the Raiders' other fantasy assets if he's not able to, be full go.
No, the only thing I worry about with the Raiders is if Chip Kelly really wants to run the football. I worry about the durability there for Nick Chubb. You would have to make sure it's a split backfield, but when you've got Alexander Mattison hitting free agency, Samir White, I just don't think they're going to want to use him anymore. I believe Amir Abdullah is a free agent if you really care about Amir Abdullah hitting free agency, but they're short on options there. So I question how Nick Chubb can be, the short-term solution there, but I digress. Ty, I actually sneaky like your landing spot kind of for the reasons that Cameron was mentioning at the end there of like, what if something happens? Because to spoil it, for the audio listeners, your pick is the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I actually think they do bring Jaylen Warren back this offseason.
Yeah, and for the same reason that I have them bringing in Amari Cooper, it's, another Browns player, guy that Mike Tomlin has seen over the years utterly destroy his defense, and he goes, maybe there's something left in the tank with Nicholas Jamal Chubb. So they bring him in, and then like you do have then I think I was about to say it's an upgrade over Najee Harris. I think jury's out with injuries.
Jury's out on that, totally.
All that, but I think you still keep the partnership of kind of the lightning and thunder, kind of downhill versus speed with Jalen Warren in that backfield.
Yeah, and I think that could actually balance out really nicely. So I actually really do like your spot. I have the Minnesota Vikings. This is it's not necessarily a dream, but this is a situation where I think Kevin O'Connell is going to want 2 running backs no matter what. It would be Nick Chubb, and if you want to draft somebody, the dude absolutely loves himself some Cam Akers. If you really want to keep shoving Cam Akers out there, there'll be somebody here with Nick Chubb. But based on where we have Sam Darnold going later, I won't spoil our picks. I don't have Sam Darnold returning to Minnesota. I think you see them start to rely on the run game more. I think you get Nick Chubb, a downhill runner. You get this team in a scoring position. He's going to be scoring the touchdowns. I think it'd be fun from a fantasy perspective. And like, you know what? If we don't want to fork out another 7-8 million for Aaron Jones, I don't know what team is really going to be all that interested in Nick Chubb for more than $5-6 million on a 1-year deal, maybe. So maybe you just play musical chairs again for one more year, bring in a guy like Nick Chubb, and then if someone falls to you in the draft, then great, you go ahead and scoop him up. But for me, I worry about Nick Chubb being kind of like a second wave free agent. Everybody just kind of passes over him due to the injury history, the age, and they let all the other dust settle first before he finds a home. So I wonder if Minnesota kind of plays that route, sees, you know what, Nick Chubb's still out there. We'll give him $5 million this year. And Minnesota 7th most cap space, effective cap space this offseason. So they also have plenty of more to work with afterwards as well. Go ahead, Ty. The fourth most effective cap space. Look at that.
4th most.
Look at that. So $5 million is hardly a dent in the wallet of the Minnesota Vikings this offseason. Ty, you brought up the name Najee Harris, so we'll go ahead and talk about him next. We're all over the board here. I haven't gone to the Raiders because we've seen Najee Harris handle a stupid workload before. My guess is that they, miss out on an Aaron Jones. I don't know if they want to take the chance at missing out on an Ashton Genty, if they want to try filling out holes elsewhere on their offense, if they'd rather take a Ted McMillan in the wide receiver room. There's so many different ways you could play this Raiders game. Kind of like J.K. Dobbins came down to process of elimination of, I don't really like the idea of J.K. Dobbins getting shoved volume in a Chip Kelly offense on the Raiders. I can swallow the idea of Najee Harris more, even though, you might just be getting another inefficient Zamir White and Alexander Madison kind of sees it from him. But, the tide can turn there with Chip Kelly at the helm. That's the reason why I went Najee Harris here. Cameron, I'm going to transition to you because you do have the Chicago Bears here, who have now traded for 2 offensive linemen so far this offseason.
Yeah, I think when we think back to David Montgomery signing with the Lions, even Jamal Williams signing with the Lions, they were, I'll stick with David Montgomery. David Montgomery kind of had the same feeling as Najee Harris has right now of, he's all right. He's kind, you weren't talking about him as, he's going to be the stud who's going to put up 16 touchdowns. Obviously, when he signed with the Lions, we kind of were thinking, well, he is an upgrade over Jamal Williams, so maybe we'll see that, continue. I think Najee Harris is in a similar situation where you kind of feel gross about Najee from a fantasy perspective of maybe he's a 10, 11 point guy. I think you put him in a Ben Johnson offense and we can see that fantasy points grow, at least from a consistency standpoint where he's not killing you on certain weeks. I think they have DeAndre Swift. I don't think they gain anything from cutting him this year. So, even if Ben Johnson doesn't love him, I think that he's still got to use him at least this season if they want to draft somebody. Obviously, if they took like a Ashton Genty, if they took a Marion Hampton, someone like that wouldn't make as much sense for Najee Harris, but you take a Travion Henderson, you get a little later down in the draft, Dylan Sampson or RJ Harvey. I think they could work better in tandem with Najee Harris and kind of give that Ben Johnson 1-2 punch that we're assuming he's going to try and find. So Najee Harris would be that David Montgomery role in this offense.
I worry about the money that they would have tied up in the running back room there. Like I think the premise of the idea is spot on. I just don't know what Najee Harris is going to command in free agency. If they can get him for cheap enough, I see it, but I don't see them going out and giving another DeAndre Swift sized deal to Najee Harris this offseason. But again, who knows what Najee Harris is actually commanded free agency. And Ty, you have Najee Harris going to the Chargers as a J.K. Dobbins replacement.
As a J.K. Dobbins replacement and slightly in a slight upgrade in the receiving game, just because I think Najee is more effective catching the ball out of the backfield than J.K. Dobbins. And I think, another, coach that has seen this player go up against his team before, right? Greg Roman with Baltimore has seen Najee Harris with Pittsburgh before. I think there's some intrigue there, and a bigger back that can handle a more 3-down workload that you don't need to try to force Gus Edwards on the field anymore.
Yeah.
So right. I think Najee Harris again is going to be, cream of the crop is a really generous title for Najee Harris.
Generous.
But I believe that he is going to be the guy that's going to be vying for most team service or for most services for most. Oh my, English is hard sometimes. Okay.
Today for you specifically. Yes.
Today it is. Najee Harris is going to be at least checked in on by a lot of teams.
Yeah. And I think he probably will command the biggest contract out of this bunch as well. And a lot of that just has to do with age and tread left on the tires. So that wraps out like the marquee running backs. We don't want to get too far into the Javonte Williams of the world. Restricted free agent Jaylen Warren, who again I kind of stated I think will likely be returning to the Pittsburgh Steelers this next season. So let's wrap it out here, fellas, with the quarterbacks hitting the open market, starting with the biggest one, Sam Darnold. I mentioned it earlier. I don't have him going to the Vikings. You two don't have him returning to the Vikings either. Ty, you and I have him ending up in Las Vegas under Father Brady, Tom Brady, my father, not my father, but admittedly a huge Tom Brady fan while he was still in the league. Ty, go ahead. Why is Sam Darnold a fig here? We don't need to harp on my love for Tom Brady.
Just one of the most quarterback desperate teams right now, and with their cap space, I believe they are second most.
Yeah,
I almost said top 5. They're second most with effective cap space. They've got the money to pay for him. I think if you also bring in a Chris Godwin, that helps Sam Darnold out even more by giving him some more weapons with Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. Maybe you do bring in one of these running backs in free agency or in the draft, and then look, if you give him Ashton Genty at 6, like you do give him sufficient pieces to make it work.
Yeah, and I kind of like his fit within a Chip Kelly offense as well, where they're going to play with a lot of tempo. And if you don't give Sam Darnold too much time to sit back there and think, obviously, you get him his first read, you get the ball out. I think his play style could fit really well in the Chip Kelly offense. And again, they got the money to go out and give him a 2-3 Geno Smith kind of deal. And granted, Sam Darnold will probably command more than Geno Smith got in his contract, but I digress. It'll be a 2-3 year deal. He probably signs with the Raiders with a second year out, after the 2026 season, excuse me. Cameron, you have him going to the Steelers. An interesting move after they went the relatively cheap route last offseason and went with Russell Wilson out of Denver and then traded, basically chump change for Justin Fields.
Yeah, I think it's really, they are just such in the mindset of we can't be so bad that we're tanking. And Sam Darnold feels like that kind of move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think I've accepted too, Sam Darnold's not a top 12 quarterback, at least for me. I couldn't find a place that he's not going to, for a fantasy perspective. He was quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah. From a fantasy perspective, because he was quarterback 9 this year in fantasy with Justin Jefferson, with Jordan Addison, and kind of Kevin O'Connell's offense with a pretty decent offensive line. 4,300 yards and 35 touchdowns. I don't see him getting to that at any of the landing spots. So I went, who's one guy who does need a quarterback upgrade? I thought it was George Pickens. I thought Pickens could use Sam Darnold. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's still Arthur Smith's offense. If they bring in a wide receiver too, I think it helps Sam Darnold. I'm just going to keep throwing my shot at Arthur Smith. But I just think, I was thinking more from other players' perspectives, because I really don't think there's a team that's going to elevate Sam Darnold to that top 10, 12 status again.
Yeah, and again, we're trying to throw a fantasy perspective in here as well of what could be most fun for not just these quarterbacks, but for the players then around them as well. So yeah, when you throw that logic in there of, for fantasy, this would be a lot of fun if we could get George Pickens, a guy who could sling on the rock. That would be great. Which is why I went for Russell Wilson to return to the Steelers. I think you let Russ keep slinging moonshots at George Pickens. You bring in an Amari Cooper, you give him another weapon. Now, I will say this is not aligned with reports. Reports have said that Justin Fields is going to be the guy to remain in Pittsburgh. I'm kind of like I'll believe it when I see it, because I think there are other teams that'll be vying for the services of Justin Fields. So I think it's kind of silly for the Steelers to take the guy who might have the hotter open market right now than Russell Wilson, but I digress. I have Russell Wilson returning to the Steelers just based on what we saw at the end of last season. They got to bring somebody back. Wasn't all that bad for George Pickens either. Cameron, you have him going to Tennessee, who, yeah, you know what? They probably could use somebody other than Will Levis, someone who, yeah, still can take the deep shot downfield, can sling the moon ball, but also play within tempo.
Yeah, Tennessee is kind of a gross team. Russ, from a fantasy perspective, is kind of a gross quarterback. From a fantasy perspective,
match made in heaven.
Kind of a match made in heaven.
Unlimited.
He really only has to support Calvin Ridley. Then they're going to continue to run the ball all ineffectively, no matter who's there. So I think you just throw in Russ and you just kind of go, here you go, Ridley. You're going to be a wide receiver 2-3-ish kind of guy.
Russ, a nice little player.
Nice little player. Russ gives you the best chance to do that out of the guys we can convince to come to Tennessee.
Well, right. Convinced to come to Tennessee is the big part there. Ty, you have Indianapolis here. This is Anthony Richardson's competition. You think that's what Russell's going to settle for?
Settle. I think Russell Wilson thrives on competition. I think that's what the guy lives for at this point, because there's not much else going for him. Like, he's not going to find his way to a contender and be the guy for that team.
No.
But I think, again, he goes to Indy, and even if he doesn't win the job over Richardson, he's like the perfect mentor. So I think from a team aspect, Russell Wilson is the perfect guy to target. And then for Russ, it's a destination to maybe win a starting job, and heavy emphasis on maybe.
It thins out quick when you start counting down these quarterbacks. You look at the top of the draft as well. With the Browns and the Giants potentially taking quarterbacks, Tennessee, who could take a quarterback at the top of the draft as well. I mean, it starts to thin out here quick. So yeah, while Indianapolis might not be a fantasy fun destination for Russell Wilson if he doesn't beat out Anthony Richardson, that just might be what's left on the plate, on the table for Russell Wilson. Let's talk about the other Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback this last year, Justin Fields. Ty, you're following reports here. You think he stays in Pittsburgh?
I am, and I do think so. I think Fields is the guy that you can at least, you would feel okay with him starting for another year if you do find a rookie in the draft. Like, I just kind of test mocked my way through a mock draft earlier this week, and I was like, you know what? There's a way that Shedeur Sanders can make it to Pittsburgh.
Totally.
I think it makes sense for them to keep Fields, to give him some competition, but it also, again, from a fantasy perspective, like Justin Fields, wasn't like the quarterback 6 or 7 like he was in Chicago with Arthur Smith, but there was still some intrigue with him as well.
Yeah, there was still some intrigue. I think that's what's most important there. Cam, you and I have him going to the Jets. It's kind of a desperation move for the Jets, but you know what? If you can give Justin Fields a one-read guy to Garrett Wilson, you give him a running back in Breece Hall, I think it can make something work here with Justin Fields. That's kind of why I like the spot here.
What are you worried about, Ty?
Yeah, what do you got?
Weren't Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson teammates at Ohio State too?
They were, yes. See,
pretty crazy.
Look, I was trying to leave that to Cameron to tee him up and let him bring it home, but go ahead. Now you stole that.
I would not have connected those dots.
Good. Okay. I feel much better.
Never would have gotten there. When I think of college, I view Justin Fields as a Georgia guy. So I mean, that's just me. But just kidding. I think for Justin Fields, I don't think the Jets have any expectations on offense. So just give it to Justin Fields, let him cook, see what happens, have some fun, sell some tickets, put up some fantasy points. That's kind of my expectation for the Jets offense. So why not have it be Justin Fields?
Butts and seats. I think you could get some fantasy points generated here from Justin Fields. Yes. I really think you could. Again, one read to Garrett Wilson, put the ball in Breece Hall's gut. You can give it to him out of the backfield as well. I think you could have a little bit of fun here. I really do think Aaron Rodgers could be a Cancun candidate here as well. He's the last name we'll bring up. Cam, you have him going to the Raiders. This is just, they lose out on everybody else, and you got to get somebody in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not Cancun. It's got to be like some random jungle on the Amazon.
Well, yeah, what am I saying? Cancun.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think it is the Raiders. It's West Coast-ish. I think it's, hey, we just need a bridge guy. You're our guy. Come in, do what you do. Hopefully, Brady can kind of talk some sense, so it's not just a circus the entire time. Pete Carroll. Yeah. But I don't know. This was kind of like they just lost out on everyone. I think Aaron Rodgers can do his job and hyper target Brock Bowers for you. And that's really all you care about in Las Vegas.
Ty, the Giants, that's where you and I both have Aaron Rodgers. I think this is one where they attack on multiple fronts, where if they do trade up to 1 and still bring in Aaron Rodgers, just get somebody in there. Maybe it's Cam Ward who starts off the season. Maybe it's a cheap enough deal where you actually don't need to keep Aaron Rodgers around. I don't know, but this, again, kind of is a process of elimination. They've been making their phone calls to vets around the league. Let's just connect the dots on that. And, not the worst thing in the world for Malik Neighbors either.
No, it's not. I mainly chose the Giants, though, because I didn't want to demonetize us for putting an ayahuasca logo or a picture on the shot. Yeah, Cancun ayahuascas, they got a really intriguing offer for Aaron Rodgers, let me tell you. But you said it perfectly, though. Like, the Giants were all in on Matt Stafford. Like, there are reports that were saying they met the trade capital, criteria. Yeah. They had the contract ready to go. Like, they are desperate for a veteran guy that can start right away, because again, like, the main reason why I'm not going to have the Giants taking a quarterback at least in the first round of the draft is because Brian Daboll and Joe Shane are fighting for their jobs this year.
Yes.
And they cannot ride that with a rookie QB.
Yes, and no one better to trust than Aaron Rodgers when your job is on the line.
We put all of our hopes into your hands, Aaron Rodgers. How did that turn out for the last guy who did? How did that turn out for Robert Saleh? How did that turn out for Nathaniel Hackett? How did that turn out? Pick another New York Jet who isn't there anymore, man. Oh my goodness, just the guy you want when your job's on the line. Give Aaron Rodgers a call, man. He'll save the day. Oh man, look. Give us your thoughts. Where do you think all these guys will be playing next season? Maybe you want to leave a Giant list. Maybe there's one or two where you're like, how did you not bring up that team? Or why in the world did you bring up that team? Let us know down below. We want to hear all of your thoughts on where you think these free agents will end up playing. We'll be back in about a week and a half from now with a free agency fallout video as well. Some of the biggest winners and losers. In the meantime, we'll be back with our rookie rankings starting next week, our rookie running back rankings and our rookie wide receiver rankings, now that we'll have had a week to digest everything from the NFL Combine and make some tweaks. So if you want to hang out for that, make sure you're subscribed, turn on that notification bell as well so you know when those episodes go up. Follow our other socials as well. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. I am at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw FFF for Cameron, and Tyler_Plath for Ty. We'll see you all next week for those rookie rankings, and then I'm already going to say we'll see you the week after for when we actually give you the fallout of everything free agency as well. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you soon. Deuces.